Every generation eventually convinces itself that it has finally solved the mystery of money. Not improved it, not stabilized it, solved it. The language always sounds confident. There are charts, elegant models, and fresh theories explaining how risk can now be controlled, cycles smoothed out, and uncertainty turned into something measurable and scientific. And every time, history waits. Because beneath the advanced tools, the sophisticated models, and the lightning-fast markets, one element never changes: human behavior. And human behavior is stubbornly loyal to comforting illusions. One of the most dangerous phrases in financial history is simple: "This time is different." Those 4 words have preceded more financial disasters than bad mathematics ever did. Merchants in 17th century Amsterdam believed it. Bankers in 1920s New York believed it. Tech investors in 1990s Silicon Valley believed it. And policymakers with far more credentials than humility believed it too. Each time the belief felt reasonable. Each time the ending looked strangely familiar. Welcome to the Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and where nothing is ever as simple as it appears. This isn't a story about one bubble, one crash, or one mistake. It's about something deeper. Why the same financial illusions keep returning century after century, even as societies become richer, more educated, and technologically advanced. If markets were purely rational, economic history would be predictable and boring. But markets are not machines. They are mirrors. They reflect fear, optimism, greed, denial, and hope, often all at the same time. And when enough people begin believing the same reassuring story, illusion slowly hardens into consensus. Step back and look at the long pattern. Not the details, the pattern. In the 1630s, Dutch traders convinced themselves that tulip bulbs had become something entirely new, a financial asset detached from agriculture. Prices rose far beyond practical value. Logic followed price, and anyone questioning the frenzy was dismissed as someone who simply didn't understand the market. 3 centuries later, investors repeated the same logic, first with radio stocks in the 1920s, then with conglomerates in the 1960s, then with internet companies in the 1990s, then with housing in the early 2000s. Different assets, different centuries, the same reasoning. What changed wasn't the illusion, only the costume. Each era dresses its optimism in the most sophisticated language it has available. One century talks about trade routes and empire, another about industrial production. Later, it becomes financial engineering. Today, it's algorithms, liquidity, and new economic paradigms. The sophistication grows, the vulnerability stays. Illusions survive, not because they are obviously false, but because they are emotionally useful. One of the most persistent illusions is the belief in permanent growth. The idea that once progress appears, it becomes permanent. That tomorrow must always be bigger than today. Not because of discipline or effort, but because the system now works that way. Empires believed it. Corporations believed it. Governments believed it. Households still do. Growth slowly stops being a result and starts becoming an expectation. And once growth is assumed, anything that threatens it is seen as temporary. A glitch, a correction, a misunderstanding. Structural limits are dismissed as outdated thinking, until one decision finally breaks the illusion. When growth slows, societies rarely question the belief itself. Instead, they look for something to blame. So systems stretch, credit expands, rules loosen. Risk is pushed further into the future. Pain isn't removed, it's postponed. And the illusion survives a little longer. As financial systems grow more complex, another quiet belief emerges. That complexity itself creates safety. that if risk is sliced, modeled, insured, and distributed widely enough, it somehow disappears. But complexity doesn't eliminate risk. It moves it. It hides it. It delays its visibility. And when no one fully understands the system anymore, fear begins to fade. When fear disappears, caution disappears with it. If complexity actually prevented crises, the most sophisticated financial systems in history wouldn't keep failing so publicly. But complexity serves another purpose. It creates distance between cause and consequence. Responsibility dissolves into procedures. Failure begins to look technical rather than human. And most importantly, complexity reinforces a powerful illusion that someone, somewhere, is fully in control. Societies place enormous psychological weight on this belief. Central banks, regulators, institutions, experts. The idea that someone is sitting in the cockpit, steering the system, not because it's always true, but because believing it helps the system keep moving. Confidence itself becomes a form of currency. History shows that control is often fragmented, reactive, and constrained by politics. Decisions are made under pressure, with incomplete information, and under the shadow of consequences. The appearance of control can buy time. It cannot guarantee outcomes. Meanwhile, the costs never disappear. They simply move. Debt allows societies to consume tomorrow's growth today. Inflation quietly reduces government obligations. Bailouts spread losses across the system instead of letting individuals absorb them. At least, that's how it's presented. Each mechanism reinforces another illusion. That pain can be managed without truly being paid. That consequences can always be postponed. That someone else will absorb the impact. But history is stubborn about one thing. Costs always surface. And when they do, they rarely fall evenly. Some profit early. Some escape in time. Some never recover. Entire generations can do everything responsibly and still inherit a system burdened by decisions they never made. That isn't a moral failure. It's structural. The most dangerous moment in any economic cycle isn't collapse, it's confidence. The moment when people believe the system has finally outgrown its own history. That risk has been mastered. That warnings are outdated. That skeptics simply don't understand the new reality. History repeats not because it wants to, but because human psychology evolves far slower than financial systems. In the space between innovation and behavior, illusions thrive. And the longer they remain unchallenged, the more convincing they become. Until suddenly they aren't. What makes these illusions so resilient isn't ignorance, it's familiarity. By the time a system shows signs of stress, most people living inside it have never experienced anything different. The rules feel natural. The incentives feel permanent. The structure feels inevitable. Questioning it begins to sound less like wisdom and more like rebellion. And so each generation learns the wrong lesson from the last crisis. After a collapse, societies promise restraint. New safeguards are built. Regulations are written thick enough to reassure everyone the same disaster cannot happen again. But memory fades faster than institutions decay. Over time, safeguards begin to look like obstacles. Rules appear inefficient. Caution feels excessive. Protection slowly becomes friction. Meanwhile, new participants enter the system. They never experienced the last collapse. They inherited the rewards, not the fear. To them, the warnings sound like distant myths, and that is how illusions quietly return. Economic cycles don't require collective stupidity. They require collective amnesia. The human mind struggles to manage long timelines of abstract risk. It responds to what is visible, immediate, and rewarding. If a system rewards a behavior long enough, that behavior begins to look rational, even when it is fragile. The modern world hasn't escaped this dynamic. It has accelerated it. Information moves instantly. Markets react in milliseconds. Capital crosses borders with a single click. But decisions are still filtered through the same emotional machinery that guided merchants loading ships by candlelight centuries ago. The tools are sharper. The instincts are the same. Short-term success still masquerades as proof. Rising prices are still mistaken for value. Complexity is still confused with intelligence. And when something works long enough, people stop asking why it works. They begin assuming it always will. That is the quiet danger of sophistication. It can numb skepticism. One of modern finance's most persistent illusions is the belief that knowledge alone protects us. That because we possess more data, more models, and more history books, we must be safer. But information doesn't automatically produce wisdom. Often, it simply produces confidence. And confidence without restraint can be just as dangerous as ignorance. Economic systems rarely collapse because everyone misunderstands them. They collapse because enough people understand them just well enough to exploit the incentives, while assuming someone else will handle the consequences. The truth is uncomfortable but simple. No system can rise above the psychology of the people operating it. Markets don't fail because charts were inaccurate. They fail because humans consistently overestimate their control, underestimate rare risks, and postpone accountability when the costs are distant. And when the consequences finally arrive, they are described as surprises, external shocks, unpredictable events, anything except patterns that were visible all along. This is where history stops being theoretical and becomes practical. Because the true lesson of financial history isn't predicting the next crisis. Trying to forecast collapse is simply another illusion disguised as preparation. History is not a crystal ball. It's a mirror. It shows how easily societies trade long-term stability for short-term comfort. How quickly caution fades once prosperity feels normal. How systems designed to manage risk slowly become systems designed to postpone it. And postponement always carries a price. Financial independence does not come from perfectly timing markets or predicting cycles. It comes from recognizing where illusions live and refusing to build your entire life inside them. It comes from understanding that systems are shaped by incentives, not intentions. That policies are constrained by politics. That complexity often hides fragility instead of removing it. And above all, it comes from humility. The humility to accept that no era is immune, no structure permanent, no amount of intelligence powerful enough to override human nature. History rarely punishes illusions immediately. It waits. It allows confidence to rebuild. It allows new narratives to take hold. And only then does it collect its price. The people who suffer most are rarely those who doubted the illusion. They are the ones who believed it had finally disappeared. As this year closes, that may be the most valuable insight of all. Not fear, not pessimism, just clarity. The recognition that progress does not eliminate patterns. It only disguises them, and that the past is never truly behind us. It sits quietly beneath us, shaping the ground we stand on. If this perspective gave you something new to think about, subscribe. History already holds the answers. I'll show you where to find them.